Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Studs. I'm Alex Stud.
And I'm Ron Stud.
And Ron, I think we're on episode 7. Am I right?
You're right. We've made it all the way to episode 7. And that's actually saying something in the world of podcasting. I didn't realize this, but I think something like 50% of podcasts kind of like stall out around episode 4. It's just like the dead point, and we almost reached 8 episodes, which is pretty impressive.
I think we have a lot of steam ahead of us. You know, I wonder if people who start podcasts generally either one, run out of guests or run out of topics, or number 2, they don't realize how much work is involved in these, because you're doing a tremendous amount of editing on the back end, getting these uploaded to all the different sources for people to be able to view them or listen to them. So I'd be curious. We'll have, I don't know.
We'll see. I got to admit, the editing stuff it's been kind of interesting. It's been something I've kind of learned as I've gone, but I've yet to actually crack a manual or a book anywhere. So, we're just trying to figure it out as we go. So
we're learning as we're going, and our listeners have been very loyal, and we're very excited for our guest today, someone I've known for quite some time, Mr. Brandon Mahoney. Please welcome.
Welcome, Brandon.
Hello. How is everyone?
We're doing great.
Brandon, it's good to have you on. You are officially our 5th guest.
Ooh, guest number 5. I like it.
But you are our first guest from the West Coast.
I hope I do us justice then.
You know, you can only hope. Brandon, I think the best way to get started is, who are you? How do you know us?
Oh, wow. So who am I? That's one of those questions you could ask like in an interview. And no matter how many times I've answered it, I never feel like I'm justifying who I really am. It's how do you answer who you are, you know? I am just a guy who is a nerd and likes to read and enjoys good drinks and likes talking with people. I don't know. Hopefully, as we talk, you'll get to know who I am a little bit better. But yeah, who am I? I'm Brandon Mahoney.
All right,
good enough for me. What are you drinking right now?
Interestingly enough, earlier today I was supposed to go wine tasting with my neighbors, good friends. You might know them, Pete Clow and his lovely lady Gina.
Of course.
And due to unfortunate events, we didn't get to go wine tasting. But in the spirit of wine tasting, I'm actually drinking Balvenie Doublewood Scotch. It's one of my absolute favorite scotches. I've been saving it. I save it for special occasions, and I figured what better drink to have than Scotch with you gentlemen. So that's what I'm enjoying tonight.
I like it.
Well, we feel honored. Now, where does the wine tasting come in? Is it because those barrels are aged in wine barrels?
Oh, no, I'm just a Scotch fan. I just thought it was interesting that I was supposed to be going wine tasting today and I didn't get to, and I had to tell someone I was disappointed by it not happening.
And so you just went for hard liquor instead?
I will always opt for Scotch over anything else. If I'm on a desert island and I am suffering and dying from thirst, and you handed me a water bottle and a glass of Scotch, I'm going for that Scotch.
Wow, that's very bold. Ron, what are you drinking right now?
I'm drinking an Evan Williams single barrel vintage. This is barrel number 99, and this was barreled back in 2012.
Oh, man,
so I'm having that. And what about you, Alex? What are you having?
So, I was just at my wife's family's place in Pittsburgh just a couple days ago. And when I was there, I uncovered there's actually this beverage, this liquor that is made in Italy that the Italian-American community in Pittsburgh fell in love with in the 1940s and 1950s. And so the only way it was ever originated in Pittsburgh was because some guy who was Italian was like, I need this. And he drove to New Jersey and bought pallets of it off of contacts from Italy who shipped it. And then he brought it back to Pittsburgh. And the whole Italian-American community fell in love with it in this little city of Pittsburgh, right? And so here we go, fast forward 60, 70 years, and it's a really popular drink, but it's only exported to Pittsburgh. It's not exported anywhere else in the entire country. So it's kind of a really unique drink. It's called Super Punch, and I'm not even going to pronounce this last word. It's Super Punch Yanamico, maybe Yanamico. And essentially it's like, the locals call it Italian Jägermeister. And it has a little bit of a Jägermeister feel to it. I'm having it on the rocks. But it has a little bit of a bubblegum front. It has a bubblegum front, and a Jaeger finish. So I'm kind of having a unique drink that you can only get in the United States if you go to Pittsburgh.
But does it beat Malort? That's the question.
Well, no. Listen, this is kind of in the same vein as Malort in that it's a unique beverage you can only get in this particular part of the United States. But you and I have talked about Malort many times. This is not Malort, but it if you like Jaeger and you're ever in the Pittsburgh area, pick up a bottle. Super Punch.
Sounds super.
All right. So now that we know the important things, now that we know what each of us are drinking, Brandon, there's always a question we ask our guests. We always ask them if there's a piece of art that somehow represents you. And art doesn't have to be a Picasso. It can be a song. It can be a movie. It can be a book. Pick anything and tell us about it.
I've listened to the episodes and I love them. So listening to Ruben's episode with you guys just got me excited because I love Ruben to death. And I had a feeling that question might come up, and I did give it some thought, and I was hesitant to share what it was, because if you Google what the painting is, it's almost a downer. But it was done by a small-time artist, Van Gogh. It's called The Sadness Will Last Forever. And it's basically it's a self-portrait of Van Gogh in the fetal position on his bed crying. And it's called The Sadness Will Last Forever. And I don't know why, but the first time I ever saw the painting, my initial reaction was wow, relatable. And I don't know if it was 2020 or what, but yeah, I would say Vincent Van Gogh's The Sadness Will Last Forever. I think it's a beautiful piece of art. And yeah, I would say I would have to pick that. It's the first piece of art that actually I felt a connection with, I would say.
I just pulled it up and I can definitely see what you're saying. What exactly do you feel resonates with you and that picture? Was it just something that, some art just kind of calls to you and it gives you sort of a visceral reaction? Or was there something the more you kind of viewed it, the more you kind of felt something deeper that resonated, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. So it was almost like an immediate connection. So one thing I've noticed as the growth of communication has happened, people are now more open about things like mental health issues, and people are starting to realize, I'm not the only one who suffers from X, Y, and Z. And so when you think back to days of Van Gogh, to see wow, depression, that was back then too. And some of his art, if you see how it changed throughout his life, it's very reflective of what he was going through, obviously at those times. And to see that, and just to say, wow, I get it. Sometimes that's how it feels. You have those days where you're really sad and it does feel like it's going to last forever. So I would say it was both the initial immediate reaction of just love at first sight. And then the more you look at it, the more it's wow, I still can relate to this. Even on my happiest of days, I can still look at that and relate to it. And not in it's going to bring me into a sad movement, but a sad mood. But I would say more so just there's someone who relates.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. And it's interesting how, art, even though a certain song, for instance, might appeal to you maybe when you're feeling a certain way, there's certain art and painting specifically that kind of just can always kind of take you somewhere, even though that may not be your mood, but that just kind of speaks to you.
Absolutely.
Very cool. I know we've asked you a little bit. I think we're just about to end up with the fire round, but tell me a little bit about some of your areas of interest as well.
So I'm a nerd. I love learning. I absolutely love learning. I was not a school person by any means. I hated going to school. I wasn't a fan of that. The whole structure of having a teacher, even though my mom was a teacher, but that whole structure never worked for me. And it wasn't because I'm not a fan of learning. I try to read 2 books a month. I love learning. And lately my interest has been very much into physics, even quantum mechanics. I've just become obsessed with that. So lately that's kind of been my interest in terms of learning. And yeah, and then everything else. I love people, so I'm constantly reading books about people, books about business and leadership and sales. But that's more so for my professional life. But outside of that, I started watching a YouTube channel. I don't know if it's good for me to shout it out, but it's called Game Theory, and they basically in these videos they take what are simple Like Mario, for example, he jumps up, he punches that brick block, and it explodes. They break down the physics of that. How much force would you need in your fist to actually take that brick and break it the way that it's broken? And they start going through all of those, or Halo, the spinning, the rings in Halo, and they talk about like what are the forces that are at work there. And I'm just like, the more I learn about it, and the more I'm like, oh wow, this is actually really exciting to hear about these things. And things like when you like the Big Bang, you start learning about things in the very beginning of the universe, and you learn that it wasn't an explosion into empty space. The Big Bang was a vast expansion of space. Like gravity, space, time, all of these things literally did not exist before that. And it's like, well, that's crazy to me. Just so wildly fascinating. It's actually one of the reasons why I love saying I'm the center of the universe. I love saying that, and I love saying that I'm awesome, but those are totally different things in a way. But saying I'm the center of the universe, it's because technically I am. Technically you are as well, but people don't generally let you get far enough in the conversation to say, why do you think you're the center of the universe? Well, because scientifically proven I am the center of the universe, but then again, so are you, so is my glass of scotch right now, because the universe is ever expanding in every which direction. And I don't know, I'm a nerd, and just learning about all these things that I thought were, when I was in high school, I would never ever grasp the concepts of, and all of a sudden I'm learning about Isaac Newton and reading about Einstein, and yeah, I'm a nerd and I love it.
Awesome.
Well, Brandon, as much as I want to spend 3 hours talking to you about quantum mechanics, and maybe we'll have another episode where we do that. That is interesting, though. I think, we've all found different ways to pass the time during this year of COVID. So I'm glad you're keeping yourself busy. But I do want to switch gears a little bit. I know you kind of introduced yourself. We talked about what you were drinking. How do you specifically actually know the studs?
How do I specifically know the studs? Well, you see, one fine day, I was working at a software startup called S1E07, and I had this chipper young fellow approaching my desk. It was one of the studs. It was Mr. Alex Studd. And yeah, that was the beginning of our wonderful friendship. In fact, if I recall, I put your chair together.
That's exactly right. I couldn't tell. It was my first day. I just graduated college, and I didn't know if this was some sort of joke, but it wasn't. It was like, welcome to the company. You have to build your own furniture. And it's like, figure it out. And this is like test one. If you can't figure this out, there's the door. And I get very flustered when it comes to anything like IKEA, Wayfair furniture. I just get flustered. In fact, Hannah usually helps me if we don't get into an argument, right? That's probably the only time we ever fight, actually, is building furniture. So I was flustered as a 21-year-old kid, graduated college, and who was there to help me build my chair? Brandon Mahoney.
And I love how you phrase it that way. Like, that's the test. Can you do this by building this chair? And if I recall, at the time, there was another chair being built, and we actually had one of our IT support guys come up and build that chair. And when we both finished, he put the chair together backwards, and we had done it correctly. So I felt really good. Of all the things I've done in my career, I would say being able to put together a chair is probably one of the highlights. Honestly though, it's such like a great story for like when you work at startups, which is what I love doing. It's like, well, how do you know you're a startup? It's like whoever the comedian is, which like, you might be a redneck if, well, you might be at a startup if the first job you have to do is build your own damn chair. So I enjoyed it.
So Brandon, I remember you helped me build my chair, and then we started on our friendship and our time working at this software company together. But I remember when you were a few years older than me, you are a few years older than me. And I remember asking you like how you got here. And I remember you telling me that like you had started at a company where was it a bank? But you were like literally squatting at people's houses for work. Tell me about that. What was that all about?
I worked at a bank, and I thought, what better thing to do than randomly sleep at people's houses? No, you're absolutely right. I was working at a bank. My career initially started off in finance, and we came to a point where like I loved working at this bank. I loved everyone I worked with. It was a great experience for me as a young career-driven individual. And eventually, my parents decided I was living with my parents because I was still a teenager, and my parents decided they were going to move, and so I had to let the bank know, hey, I'm moving, and they basically were like, hey, we don't want you to leave. What if you move into some houses that we own that are getting vandalized and keep these houses safe? And so that's where it all started from. And so the president of the bank came to me and was like, hey, a lot of foreclosed homes. There was the housing market crash. We need someone to take care of it. And so I did. I moved into a little tiny trailer. And I mean, these places were some of them were absolutely ridiculous, amazing. But this first one was this little tiny, disgusting little trailer there. I mean, there was like people were obviously going to the bathroom in the trailer. And so my job was, well, it was bad. And my job was go in, clean it up, and you can live there, but we're gonna give you some money. And I got to experience working on homes, like doing not just yard work like a typical adult, but doing electrical work and taking care of the appliances and then working with real estate agents. And I ended up actually selling that first piece of property. And the bank came back and was like, hey, did you want to do this again? And so I continued. I moved for about 2 years. I moved into about 7 different properties. And I even lived at one point in this like 11,000 square foot house.
Wow.
That, believe it or not, I don't know if his name is okay to say on this, but Donald Trump used to actually visit and stay at this house. And I got to live in this home.
Wow.
Wait, and was this in Dover, Delaware?
Wyoming, Delaware. There is a Wyoming, Delaware, for those who aren't aware, which was actually came to be a very big surprise to me when I got called for the interview. The bank doesn't exist anymore, but it was the First National Bank of Wyoming, and they called me for an interview, and I said, hey, I live in Delaware. And they're like, yeah, there's a Wyoming, Delaware. Who'd have thunk it? And it's in an area called Penwood that's been nicknamed Pillwood because that's where all the doctors and all the fancy folk live.
And apparently Donald Trump.
Well, he visits there. It's kind of funny because it was owned by a very prominent lawyer on the East Coast. He, obviously like things didn't work out. He lost the house. One of the next places I lived in was actually his law office building that was being converted back to a house. And it's just, I mean, yeah, it was just a wild experience. It's weird because it's not something I think about very often, but when I do think back to it, I am insanely grateful for that experience. But it did then launch me into sales, oddly enough.
Interesting. Sort of side question related to that. There's an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philly, and one of the things that Frank, a character played by Danny DeVito, mentions is you got to watch out with these people being foreclosed on. They smear excrement all over the walls. Was that something you actually saw, or?
So depending on the property, I was given special instructions to not allow residents to go into specific areas of their home. And I'll tell you why. In one of the houses, which was the large one, they had literal golden fixtures in certain like in certain bathrooms. And a part of the foreclosures, they had to agree that the part of the value of the house from the bank was those fixtures. So it was, and when they signed off and everything, they were not allowed to take those. So I had to be there to make sure they did not go into those bathrooms and rip the faucet off, which was wild to me because here I am, maybe 19 years old, and I'm telling this family, hey, don't go inside this bathroom. Which, let's talk about this bathroom for a second. It literally was mirrors all around. When you close the door, mirror on the ceiling, mirrors everywhere. It was the wildest bathroom I've ever been in, and it was also my favorite bathroom to use because, like, if you're ever feeling lonely, sit in a room with mirrors everywhere. It's quite the trip, I will say.
Now I have a mental image that I can't get out of my head. So, we'll just take it at that. So you did this, and you're just bouncing all over the place, but you're living rent-free,
not
right?
Rent-free. I was getting paid to do it.
So you could say you were a professional squatter. Is that correct?
I was a professional squatter for a while. It was my favorite job, and I have been trying to find that rush all over again. So I've been keeping that my entire life.
I was gonna say, if If I could find a job where they say, hey, you know what? We want you to live in 11,000 square foot homes and just kind of be there. I might take that job, Brandon.
It's kind of like you have your good days and your bad days. The good day was definitely like living in a house that had its own sauna. It was on a lake. But the worst day was the day I moved into a place where it was like, oh, there is literal feces in the oven. Yay!
That's when you know you've really upset your boss that week.
Well, even better was my best friend, whom I love dearly, Sam, actually, her and her family helped me clean up some of these places. And so I'm just like, oh, it's like my favorite person in the world. And they're literally scrubbing the floor. And why do they put up with me?
So Brandon, was that the moment when you saw the feces in the oven where you said, I'm going to go get a career in technology sales?
Actually, it was the moment I said, you know what? It's only got to get better. No, actually, what pushed me was at a certain point, I'm at the bank and I'm working, and I'm really happy I'm working with some amazing, wonderful people, and I'm looking around that it dawned on me that everyone I work with, they've been working at that bank pretty much their entire lives. Like that was their career. And I want to say I'm like 20, 21, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I love all of these people, but my life can't be this. I can't do this for the next, I don't know, how long do people work? Like 10 years, 20 years or so? And I'm like, I can't do this for the next 10, 20 years. And so I kind of, it gave me anxiety. It terrified me that as much as I loved them and what I was doing, I knew I needed more. And so I walked into my boss's office, whom I still to today have all the respect in the world for. And I just told him, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't have another job lined up. I had nothing. And I just put in my notice. And a lot of that was pressed upon me because it was my mom had passed, in around that time in that year. And I'm just like, I'm ready for something new. I needed something new. And I left that bank and I ended up going to another bank. I went to a Bank of America. I worked there for 4 months and realized it's not just this bank that I feel I need to get away from. It's banking in general just isn't for me. And so I left. I ended up having a personal relationship with somebody who was starting a company, and they ended up having a conversation with me, and they brought me in as the first inside sales rep of the company, of S1E07. Didn't know if I'd be happy with it, but I ended up falling in love with it very quickly. Yeah.
That's a fascinating story, and we're going to take a break. But when we get back, we're going to hear all about how Brandon got into sales, got into management, and then how he ended up on the West Coast traveling across the country during a global pandemic. We'll be right back. And we're back with Between Two Studs, and we're really excited. We're chatting with Brandon Mahoney, and he was telling us about his house squatting and all these crazy adventures. And then, Brandon, you ended up in sales. For people who don't know anything about sales, quickly kind of walk us through a picture, because you've experienced truly what a boiler room scenario is, right? If you've ever seen Wolf of Wall Street, where people are on their headsets, people are making crazy calls and closing deals and ringing bells. I mean, is that exaggerated? Is that true? Like, talk to us about that.
See, I love the way you describe it, because that's literally what it's like. Thinking of one of my first ever sales startup experiences, it's headsets on, it's everyone talking. There's literally a bell that's being rung when deals are being closed. It is the best way I could think of describing that type of sales floor is like structured chaos. It just, if you look at it, you're just like, what in the world is going on? But when you're in it, you know exactly what's going on, and there's a workflow, and it's just amazing and fun, which is why I absolutely love sales. Yeah, it's structured chaos.
But what's it like managing a team of a bunch of 21, 22-year-old kids that just graduated college, and they're just out to have fun, right? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but like, what's that like?
That's, it's funny because that's where it was, and it's kind of changed now. I have team members that are older than me that I'm working with and managing, and it doesn't change. That mentality doesn't change at all. And so I I'll take a step back and say, a lot of times you have this viewpoint of sales is very type A, direct, aggressive, in your face type of person. And it's not that anymore. The beauty of inside sales, what I like to specialize in, is you could have those very laid back, relaxed individuals now just crushing it in sales. But working with a bunch of kids doing sales, you get them motivated with the money. You're going to make a ton of money, and that's how you keep them focused. And they do look at like Wolf of Wall Street and that style of selling, where it's just like very in your face. And it's like, no, you don't. That's not how you want to be. You're building a relationship, and it's like, but I want to make money. I want to close the deal today. It's like, well, but no, don't do like that, please. And so getting them grounded in, Sales can be a great career if you want to make money fast, but you can also make a lot of money for a long time if you build relationships. And so it's teaching them about the networking aspect of it, where oftentimes that gets forgotten. It's not the used cars salesman who just wants to get you off the lot and get to the next transaction. You want to build a relationship. So the way you set up yourself and the way you start that relationship, not just with one company, but with everyone you work with, is going to be fundamental to your success, which is why I think not having that knowledge is why a lot of sales professionals, they go in and then leave very quickly. There is very high turnover in the world of sales, which is unfortunate because sales is exciting. It's so exciting to be in sales, in my opinion. That's why I do it. But it's the hope is with young kids, particularly fresh out of college, is let's grab onto their excitement and keep that excitement growing, because it can be quickly lost.
Well, and I know, Brandon, this was something you did for several years, which was building these teams that didn't have an inside organization and building it from the ground up. So you did that, and I thought you were going to be an East Coast lifer. And then one day you just say, oh, you know what? There's a global pandemic going on. Maybe now's a good time to move across the country. I mean, what happened? What happened there?
There is always some kind of catalyst for change. And for me, I love the East Coast. And a lot of people always approach this question with this mindset of like, oh, why? Like, did you not like Delaware anymore? And I love Delaware. I love East Coast. And so there was a point where, I had just lost my dog, love of my life, Sebastian. 2 weeks after that, I left a company I was working for, and I've been playing around in my mind the idea of I need change. You do not grow without change, and change is good, change is beautiful. And I was in a position where I was looking around me and I was happy. I would say I was content, but I needed more. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna find other startups, and I'm gonna continue my career and my growth. And I just kind of threw my resume out to the ether, and companies reached out to me, and my current company, RFPIO, reached out to me, and I had a wonderful conversation with Angela, who was my VP, and the stars aligned. And this was all before the pandemic all swept the nation. And so I was really excited about it. My car was being shipped, my motorcycle was being shipped. I was flying out. I was saying goodbye to everybody and just kind of enjoying my time until that finally happened. And all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and I had just turned down offers from several other companies. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get that email from, this new company and they're going to say, hey, sorry, we're going to put things on hold. We're not going to hire you. We're going to wait. And I was literally so afraid of that happening. I canceled my flight. Because everything was shutting down, canceled my flight, canceled the shipping of everything. I threw all the most important things I have in my life in my car, and I just started driving across the country. This was around a time when this is March 21st, 22nd, I want to say, around that time frame where every state was just now launching their quarantine times. And I'm literally driving, and I'm telling my brother, who lives in San Francisco, help me find an Airbnb, help me find a place to live, because one had emailed me and they accepted me, but then pandemic happened and they said, hey, we can't have you stay here anymore. Then I emailed another family and, hey, I see you have a place. Can I stay with you? They didn't even accept me. They're just like, nope, like nothing's available, because again, everyone's under the quarantine. And so I finally found a family that was willing to say, hey, yes, we have a property. You can stay here. And so I booked it for 5 months. And I'm doing this while driving across the country. There's literal signs on the highways saying quarantine in effect at midnight tonight. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm only going to be in the state for another 2 hours, so I don't have to worry about it. But when I say shut down, even even the rest areas where like you get to see people, shut down, completely shut down. Only bathrooms were available. Any food I got was vending machine food. It was a trip, but I tell people, and they think I'm being sarcastic. I enjoyed that experience. For me, driving across the country was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Like if I could go back and do it again, and I will someday do it again, even if just for the fun of it, I highly encourage anyone, if you've never driven across the country, do it. Please do it. It is amazing to me. I've never felt two emotions so strongly in my life at the same time, and that was complete and utter fear, and also this just overwhelming hope for like what the future holds for me, and everything that's going to be available to me as I'm going across the country. And they were there both at the same time. And I'll say, when you're driving across from the east to the east, there's not much to see. You're going through a lot of really flat land, a lot of nothingness. And that kind of scared me because I've never really experienced a drive across the country. And I'm driving and I'm seeing all of a sudden the hills or the roads, it's no longer flat. All of a sudden there's rolling hills. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that's pretty cool to see, these big, massive hills. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to see mountains. And all of a sudden I'm driving on these highways where on one side there's these beautiful mountain tops with snow caps and beautiful trees and forests. And on the right-hand side, there's a big, huge, winding river. And I'm like, I don't see this on the East Coast. And it's so beautiful. And I'm like, okay, that feeling of hope of like, you're going to be in this whole new beautiful world. And I'm just like in awe of this. And like, honestly, it almost brought me to tears to see all this. Cause it's just like, wow, I never thought that like my life would be this. And if this is the welcome to me, like, hello, Brandon, welcome to the West Coast. We will embrace you with beautiful rivers and waterways and mountains. It was truly just if I could relive some of those feelings again and again, heaven to me, just absolutely amazing.
That's really interesting. And I mean that sincerely. I know I was watching the Borat second one a few months back, and there's that whole scene where you can see everything's just so empty because of what was going on with the quarantine, where everyone was kind of afraid to go anywhere, do anything. And in some ways it was almost a bit of an overreaction given where we're at now, but maybe it was also an underreaction. You mentioned that you were living with an Airbnb family for a pretty extensive period of time. What was that like? And did they, like, when you came in, did they like force you into a special quarantine holding area, or did they just say, you know what, we're just going to roll the dice? This Brandon guy seems like a pretty good guy, even though he's from the East Coast. How did that work out?
I love people. I absolutely love people. So like I'm going to this situation like I'm going to meet people. It's going to be fantastic. And I will say, host of the Airbnb, her longtime partner, just the two of them, the most like sincere, kindest. I mean, to invite a stranger into your home during a pandemic, you have to have a huge heart. And I mean, we're still in touch now. In fact, I became friends with one of their children. He awesome gentleman. And no, it was there was definitely the back and forth through text as I'm coming across like, hey, please make sure you're quarantining yourself. You know, we do love our family. You know, please don't bring COVID here to us. And I'm like, I am in a car driving across the country. I have got hand sanitizer in every door handle, and that wasn't because of the pandemic. I've always done this. I'm that kind of person. Like, I'm about as quarantined and as safe as a person like as you can imagine. But when I met them in person, it was very just, welcome to our home. This is now your home. Like, just be comfortable. You're good. And so, like, I am, like, in terms of like a first experience with Oregon, will be forever grateful for that, because they were so genuinely kind and sweet. And when I actually did move out and move into my apartment, because the idea was to have time to find a place to live and get to know the area, you know, they took me out to dinner, to quarantine dinner.
Sure.
It was to tell me that they were going to miss me. And I'm just like, I am like, I could have just been a transaction to you. Like, and that's how you could have treated me. It's just, I'm just getting money from you. And like, here's your little hole and just like, leave us alone. But they got me gifts to like, for like my new place. And like I said, we're still in touch. And like, I am just like, yeah, just wonderful, wonderful people. Granted, the story of living there was I tweeted at one point, and I removed it because I realized that like it's not very me. Was I joked with the fact that I was living with a stripper and her baby because I was living with a stripper and her baby, and so I don't know if we want to dive into that. But
that might deserve its own episode.
That sounds incredibly Oregon-esque, though. Like from what I've heard, and I haven't been to Oregon. But
well, if you ever do, I will introduce you to all the strippers and babies that I know, that I have met through my time in Oregon. But yes, it was a wonderful experience and absolutely true.
Well, you know, this isn't funny, but it kind of is funny. The first story I heard about the state of Oregon after COVID broke, like it was really starting to take over all over the country. It was probably late March, early April. And the first thing I heard about Oregon was that there was a strip club that what they did was they turned into a food delivery restaurant, and the strippers were basically turned into delivery drivers. They were Boober Eats, I think was the name of it, right?
That is amazing. I am not familiar with, granted, I'm not generally like a food app user. I used to send people food, but I myself don't regularly get food sent to me. Boober Eats.
I think, yeah, Ron, am I right about Boober Eats? I think the whole idea was it's like DoorDash, except you have a stripper delivering
right.
food
That
to you.
was my understanding of it as well. I think I read an article about that, and that's what they were saying. They said that Oregon, back to my previous comment, has a very decent amount of strippers relatively for the population. And that was something that for many people who are in that profession, once the pandemic hit, what are you going to do? You're not going to be doing dances. So that was something where they said, boy, you know what? You have these very attractive people. Let's have them do delivery. And then they would just kind of do a dance in front of your door as they dropped the food off. And
I didn't know about the dance in front of the door.
So now you know the real reason why I moved across the country. Great.
It all makes sense between that and just great coffee too, right?
Oh, yeah. People always ask, like, Brandon, are you a coffee snob? And no one likes to admit that they're a coffee snob, but damn it, I'm a coffee snob. I love my coffee. I do love my coffee. I had a problem with coffee for a long while. I was working in Philly, and I was doing 3 cups of coffee a day, and that doesn't sound like a lot. But I also had 3 shots of espresso in each one of those cups of coffee, which arguably too much. And then it hit a breaking point when someone very close and dear to me pointed out, you're putting pre-workout in your coffee. There's something wrong with you. And I did. I was putting pre-workout in my coffee just to get that caffeine fix. So I ended up having to take a break. I was going to say quarantine from coffee. So I took a break from alcohol. I took a break from caffeine, all bad things for 2 months. And honestly, I missed coffee so much. And when I came out of it and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to drinking alcohol. I'm going to go back to drinking coffee. I wanted to just have like high quality coffee. I wanted to truly enjoy my coffee because I'm a purist. When I drink my scotches, my alcohol, it's neat.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't have ice. I drink it neat. I want to taste the it's like art. I want to experience the art for how it was meant to be experienced. There's no sugar. There's no cream. It's just the beauty of the black bean coffee. And so,
in going back when you were at your peak, I think they say a standard cup of coffee is about 100 milligrams of caffeine. At its peak, can you just give us a guesstimate? How much caffeine were you consuming in a day?
How much is an espresso?
Espresso's about 90 milligrams, I believe. So were you having black eyes or green eyes?
I was doing, I think these were considered purple eyes, actually.
Okay. That's 3.
What's up? Explain that to the audience, the listeners.
So yeah, I should explain that. So a black eye or red eye is what people start off with, which is it's an Americano with an extra shot of espresso. 2 shots is a black eye. Sometimes people call that a yellow eye, and then the 3 shots, from my understanding, I think that's a green eye, because at that point all you're seeing is go, go, go. And and I'm with you. I do not add any sugar. I do not add any cream. I'm the same way. But 3 of those, that's a good amount of wake up juice.
I'll be honest. What helped, and it was a joke within the office, was there was a coffee shop within the office building I was working at in Philly, and oftentimes they would just give me either free coffee, or they would I would go in, because I'd have to bring like reps down and just had meetings down there at the coffee shop. Let's get away from the office, and they would just either give me free coffee, or they'd be like, "Hey, we'll give you an extra shot of espresso on us. Don't worry about it. We love you, Mr. Mahoney. Like, good on you." And it's like, they never called me Mr. Mahoney, but and I just became friends with them. I love coffee shops. I've made a lot of really great friends working out of coffee shops, and so if you're listening and you're a barista, you're one of my favorite people in the world. I absolutely love you.
So talk to us about the coffee scene out in Portland. I know COVID's going on, but it's got to be a little bit different than the Philadelphia, Delaware area.
It's honestly, it's so hard to say, because people ask, like, how do you like the West Coast so far? And all I have to talk about really is the geography, because everything is still shut down. I mean, restaurants aren't open, coffee shops aren't open. So my experience with the coffee scene so far is just buying bags of coffee from local the coffee shops. You can actually walk into them and get bags of coffee, or they have them up for sale. So I wish I could go into more detail about the coffee scene and really about Oregon in general. But it's coming up on a year that I've been in Oregon. But in reality, I feel like I'm still new here, because there's nothing. We're still under strict lockdowns. You're not able to go to restaurants. You're not able to go to coffee shops. You can't. There's so much you can't do, and it's heartbreaking, because like I'm here isolated in this little apartment box, and I'm really excited because all I hear from people is, "Oh man, like when this festival starts," or like, "If only you were here when this was going on." And I'm like so excited about all the awesome things that are going to be available to me when it does open up. But as of right now, my coffee scene is going to – so one thing out here that I will say that blew my mind is being able to buy – anyone from Delaware will relate to this, the very small population of Delaware. There is alcohol in the grocery store here. There's beer, there's wine. I've never experienced that before in my life. I am in my 30s, and this is my first experience of going into a grocery store, and like I literally walked in, I see wine. It's like the first thing I see, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm in the wrong place. And I'm like, wait, here's fresh
Brandon. Brandon, welcome to civilization.
It blew my mind.
I know. It's crazy that Delaware, and actually Pennsylvania for that matter, still have a lot of those blue laws. So yeah, it is crazy, because it's the same thing, in most of the country, to be able to see, you want to see Bud Light next to the poultry section, right? It's not a weird thing, except in some of these old states, right, that have some really old blue laws. So, if you're like me, because I know since Chicago, I've moved there, similar situation, I've heard so many things, and I have a list. I have a list of places I need to go, places I need to visit. Are there notable foods or drinks that are really specific to Oregon or Portland that people have told you about, and maybe you even haven't had it yet, but you're excited to?
So one of the beautiful things about being on a team with people is you can sit there and because I run the team, I can put everyone on a call and just say, hey guys, give me recommendations. What should I do? And like most people, everyone's opinionated. Everyone is, this is the best thing. This is the best thing. This is the best thing. But they also reveal things. So like Oregon is known for donuts, and there's
voodoo donuts.
Yes. And one of the first things I was told about that place is be prepared to be disappointed. It is super hyped up, but when you go, it's like, Like I'm like a Krispy Kreme fan. I will crush some Krispy Kreme. So I've not gone to Voodoo Donuts yet, but one of the things I was told was, and I don't know if they're doing this because they want to lower my expectations. So when I go, it's like the best thing in the world. But they've kind of were like, hey, it's like, yes, we're from Oregon, we love voodoo, but like it's not as great as people make it seem. It's kind of gimmicky. And so I haven't gone that route yet. But I will say food-wise, there's some amazing Thai cuisine out here. I've been ordering from this place, I will say it's Farmhouse Thai, and when I first had it, it blew me away. And then there's a lot of breweries. One of the similar to Delaware is there's a lot of breweries out here, and a lot of fantastic breweries, a lot of really great places to pick up a six-pack from. But everyone has a recommendation as try this, do this, do this. Went to one place I highly recommend to anyone called Killer Burger, and they do a peanut butter bacon burger that I felt so bad. I was meeting up with one of my reps in person because I love the in-person interaction, and for a good 5 minutes that it took me to eat this burger that he was talking, I don't think I heard a single word he said, because from that first bite of this burger with peanut butter and bacon, everything around me turned off and all focus was on this burger. And it's just, my mouth is watering right now just thinking about this burger. It was just mind-blowingly fantastic. And I remember finishing it and looking up, and he hadn't even touched his burger. He maybe had a bite, and he just like talking away. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be getting to know you. And I just got to know this burger in like a very deep personal level. And I feel bad for whatever he just had to watch me do to this burger. It was so good. So if you're ever in the Oregon area around Portland, Killer Burger, they have a peanut butter bacon burger. And it is just, I might have to get one tonight. It was just, it's everything that's good in life.
Yeah. No, and I apologize. I know for our listeners in the future, we're recording this right around the dinner hour in Oregon right now. And I think we'll actually wrap this up with one last question. Specifically, now that you've whet your appetite for what you want to have for dinner tonight, what are you pairing it with in terms of drinks? Like, what are you drinking lately? I know you mentioned you're a huge fan of scotches, but is there a specific type of scotch that you enjoy? Are you very much into the peatiness, or are you into all whiskeys in general? Is there maybe a bourbon that you also enjoy?
So all whiskeys in general. I'm the worst person to ask for food advice or drink advice, because I will get excited about anything. You want to talk about lasagna? I will get stoked about lasagna. You want to talk about McDonald's, the Big Mac? Are you kidding me? Heaven. When it comes to alcohol, I'm the same way. Like I will drink and enjoy anything, but my staples, my go-tos, scotch is going to be Balvenie. A glass of Balvenie Doublewood 12-year with a side of bacon.
I'm noticing a trend, Brandon, with bacon.
I have a very, very healthy obsession with bacon. And honestly, there was a little while where like my breakfast would be Balvenie and bacon together. Honestly, it's just you laugh, but I'm telling you, pour yourself a glass of Balvenie Doublewood and get yourself a side of bacon. You will enjoy it. I promise. And if you don't, you're lying to yourself. Your taste buds are being fooled. It's a fantastic pairing. I'm a believer. Like I love wine, but just like you can pair chocolates and cheeses with wines, you can do that with scotches because those tasting notes are still there. So finding how to pair those things together. So like I would lighter, like if I'm eating fish, that's white wine. Jameson. Yep. Jameson's a very light whiskey. Jameson with fish. Fantastic. You want a steak? Then I'm going to go for like an Angel's Envy. Angel's Envy bourbon, delicious. That with like a good cut of red meat, phenomenal. Love it. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I was kind of interesting too, especially when you're talking about what your favorite is in terms of a year vintage, because it's so interesting going from like a 12 to a 16 to an 18. How much different that mellowing can but it also kind of brings out different flavors. So especially with a Balvenie at 12, that's probably like the right mark where, especially like you said, complementing it with bacon, that actually sounds phenomenal right now. So you sold me on that one.
Yes, do it. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. And you're right. I find as they age, as they get older, that taste almost intensifies more and more. And my understanding, and not my understanding, my complete theory, because it's probably completely wrong, is that as you get older, you start to lose your taste buds. Your sense of taste starts to go away. So you have to order the older and older stuff so that you can actually enjoy the taste of it. I'm probably completely wrong on that, but I'm sticking with that, and I'm stating it as fact now. So that is now a fact. That's why they have older scotches, so that older folks have something to enjoy.
One follow-up question, and I think we'll then kind of wrap things up. So when you mentioned you have it neat, and I think with Scotch, especially with some of the peatiness that has with it, do you add any drops of water just to kind of accentuate some of that flavor? Or do you just have it completely neat?
So my anytime I try a new bottle for the first time, my brother got me a 2 glasses, and they are competition glasses. They are the same glasses they use when they're doing whiskey competitions. And so there's instructions that go along with it, how you pour it, how you smell it. So the first thing I will do is I will try it in that. I always pay attention on the bottle if it's designed to be, if the creator of this, the distiller, it says you should drink this way. It should be done on the rocks. It should be done with a finger or 2 of water. I will follow those instructions, because if that's how it's meant to be enjoyed, I will. But typically, if there's nothing on the bottle to tell me how to do it, I will try it neat first. I will enjoy it the way it was designed to be enjoyed. And if I need to, I'll add a finger of water. I'll add 2 fingers of water. I'll add a bucket of water. Whatever it takes for me to be able to enjoy. There is no wrong way of. I've fallen into the habit oftentimes of even with like cigars, learning and researching what's the proper way, what's etiquette, and then realizing no one cares. Enjoy it the way you want to enjoy it. If you like your Scotch with a side of milk, I can't be friends with you. But go ahead and
I love it.
Brandon, I think on that note, that's perfect, right? In the end, find things that you enjoy it the way you want to enjoy it. So, Brandon, I think there's so much more to talk about. I think we could have a whole half an hour talking to you about bacon. So maybe we're going to bring you back on and we'll do just that. I want to thank you so much for your time for this episode. And again, we hope to have you on certainly sometime in the future, and you can tell us more about the fun and things that you're doing in Portland once life opens up a little bit.
Thank you both so much. This was awesome. I've been looking forward to this and so excited for this. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and we're looking forward to having you back on too. Thanks again, man, and thanks for all of our listeners. And stay tuned for our next episode of Between Two Studs.